Hey, Enterprise Marketer fans. Before we get started with this podcast, I want to tell you about an event at the end of March that we're participating in called the Intelligent Content Conference. There, we'll be bringing our podcast and the whole show back out and incorporating some new things like live streaming and maybe even a poker game. And we want you to participate. So we'd love to have you come out to Vegas if possible. And we even have a code, ENTMKTR100, if you can. But if not, we want you to be a part of the show. We want you to come to our live stream channel, which will be available on Enterprise Marketer. And we want you to see all the amazing content coming out of ICC. We'll be talking with Ardith Albee, I'm sure, hopefully, because she's awesome, and other people like Andrea Freier, Robert Rose, Joe Polizzi, and some of the great cast of people who are from the MarTech space, not just the content marketing space. So we know how we can embrace amazing technologies to do amazing content marketing. And so we'd love it if you can make it, but if not, go to enterprisemarketer.com and get ready for an amazing event. So I'm here at Marketing Profs B2B Forum, my favorite fall event. I mean, I love Content Marketing World. It's so big and it's so bright. And I mean, where else do you see Luke Skywalker?
True.
But I love coming to Boston. I love seeing the leaves change, and I love the event and how much excitement goes on here.
Yep.
And so you're Matthew Grant, and you're one of the original Marketing Profs folks, right?
Well, it's interesting. I did work for Marketing Profs for 2 years, I guess 2011, 2013. But I came to my first B2B forum in 2008. I came here as our company was like a bronze sponsor or something like that. So I came here, and actually the funny thing about that one was I had never met Ann Handley. I had interviewed her for a blog I was writing about marketing careers. And I did, at the time, I was working for a company called Aquent, and I did a company-wide conference call every week, kind of news, this is what's happening in the company this week. And I realized that I needed a quiet space to actually use a phone.
Yeah.
And so I asked Ann, who I had just met that day, in person, and I said, I know you've got a hotel room here. Do you mind if I use your hotel room to do this? And of course, she's like, who are you, first of all? But of course, her second thing was, sure, fine, here's the key. I might be a little messy, just don't pay attention.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my introduction to, in a sense, when you were talking about, I like this event a lot as well. This is one of the biggest ones I think they've ever had. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I know they play up this kind of you're coming home sort of thing. And that can be a little corny if it doesn't feel true. Mm-hmm. But it's funny how much, there's an intimacy, I almost want to say, about this event. It's small enough where you can actually hang around out with people. It goes on long enough where you actually have time to actually catch up with people. And like I said, some of the people I've been seeing here, for 8 years now. So it's nice.
Yeah, it's like a pilgrimage to Boston, right? And it does feel like this is a market, Boston is a marketing center.
It is sort of a hub. I live in Concord, Mass, so I didn't have to. The pilgrimage only took me about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
but no, it's nice. And there are, I don't know, it can, I guess because of Marketing Profs, and especially stuff that was really when social media marketing and content marketing first took off. I think with HubSpot and some of these other companies that really kind of put it on the map as a practice and as really a viable business practice. They're certainly here in Boston and Massachusetts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were the voice behind Marketing Smarts for a while, correct?
I was. So that was one of the things when I got hired by Marketing Profs. I'd done some freelance work for them, and then they were launching Marketing Profs University. And so they needed someone to sort of ride herd on that. So I was brought on to do that. But one of the things in my interview when talking to Ann and Val Witt and Alan Weiss, I had said, you guys should really have a podcast. They didn't have one at the time. And so they were like, yeah, that's really great. But of course, the first year I spent working on Marketing Profs University, it was a brand new product. We were putting out new course every month of usually 7 to 10 courses. So it was so for every month I had to chase down, find speakers, build out the curriculum, find speakers who can actually address these things, make everything happen, do quality control on their courses. We were doing live Q&As, I think. So it was very hectic time. And so, but after about 6 months, I was like, well, what about this podcast thing? We want to do this. And Aaron's like, yeah, of course. Let's get it started. So yeah, so I came up with the title because I was trying to think, what do we call it? So I thought marketing smarts. I just liked how that sounded, like there was a cheekiness to it maybe. And, but also there was part of this, it was a little bit of a word play in my mind because, you say when something hurts, it smarts.
Yeah.
Which a friend of mine pointed out is actually, I think, maybe a Yiddishism. I think it's related. The German word for pain is Schmerz, which I think gets turned into smarts.
Yeah.
Basically, that's smarts. So I thought it was also kind of like marketing hurts. Like it's not always easy, especially it's not always easy to be B2B marketer and that sort of thing. So yeah, I was trying. Someone asked me how many episodes I did because I did it from like September 2011, until like May 2013. So I did like 70 episodes or something. And so it was pretty fun. I learned a lot too, like what works and what doesn't, and and also how difficult podcasting can be, particularly in the post-production phase and editing it and trying to get it right and having some kind of production values around what you're doing.
Today, real time is the only time that counts. To stay relevant, you have to stay ahead. Your customers want the right information, right now, wherever they are. So how do you meet the demands of today's customers? By marketing in context. Context accounts for a customer's interaction with your brand. So each touch builds on the next, creating more meaningful experiences for your customers. At Sitecore, we call this context marketing. To do it well, you need marketing technology that has three things: contextual intelligence, content management, and omni-channel automation. Contextual intelligence gives you the information you need about your consumers, so the content you manage is more relevant and is automatically delivered wherever your customers are. The Sitecore Experience platform was built for context marketing, so you can create a more personalized customer experience. Demand more from your marketing technology. Demand more from marketing. Own the experience. Sitecore.
Everything about podcasting is how can I get it right the first time?
Yeah.
Right? Because 8 hours into cleaning up audio, you're like, I never want to do this again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no. So that's, how can you keep it short? I can be like a fairly polite person. And so I'm not always good at interrupting people or just like, well, let's get back on the topic and stuff. So I got a little better about that. I definitely started focusing a lot on what I knew I could control. Intros and outros, because I would always do those. I would start with an intro, but I would always write it and then re-record it afterwards. So there was an idea of, especially because sometimes, I was doing this over Skype, but there were like things that would come up like, oh, I can't do Skype. Like I was interviewing a reporter who worked for Bloomberg Newsweek because he had written a book about the Glock, the gun, the Glock. It was the story. It was a really fascinating book. Unfortunately, his name is escaping me now, but it was, of course, I had heard about Glocks, but I didn't know the story. And it was actually a very interesting kind of marketing story and things they did to introduce it. But they wouldn't allow the reporters to use Skype from their office at Bloomberg. So I had to do it over the phone, and then you're just all these different things you're trying to do, equalizing levels when the people are remote. But there was always this belief I had, you can do as much as you want, but if you start out and end with as kind of high production as you can get, it makes the other things seem, they must be having a problem with the connection. And in fact, I think too, because like Skype has become such a big part of the news world. Like if you listen to NPR or something like that, a lot of times they're interviewing people over Skype.
Yeah.
It can also often be the most reliable connection. So I feel like people's ears have gotten a little more tolerant of not superior audio. But I always felt like if you show this could be clear if we had control over it. So now you can excuse what's kind of funky about what else is going on.
Yeah, and I mean, we're at an event, and this is a perfect time because, like, we're set up, right? It takes about 6 hours to set this thing up, and today is the day they decide to do the escalator.
Yeah.
It's right next to us, right? And they're pounding on stuff, and I love the Boston accent, so it's go up, right? And I just keep hearing that, and I'm like, when I get back and I open up Audition and I pull up my Spectrum and I pull up my Waveview format, I will see go up, and I will remember what that waveform looks like. So now I can just skim the file and go, here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is, delete. Those are things that you learn to do, but in marketers, I think everyone's all excited about podcasting. Joe Polizzi talked about podcasting, and he talked about the revenue model, and we're all looking at how to make marketing an actual revenue generating center for our companies. And so everybody's getting excited about podcasting, and us veterans are like, oh, young Padawan, go to Guitar Center and buy that mic, get that blue USB microphone. Yeah, go back and record your first show.
Well, I do have to say though, in defense, because we didn't have a huge budget, and I was doing most stuff, frankly, out of GarageBand on my MacBook. And using a blue mic, what I do like about the blue mic, it's cheap, but I also bought a little sound box. So one of those portable sound boxes. I didn't have a room I could do it in, but I could actually set up the mic within the sound box, and it just those little things. I mean, that was the kind of the beauty of podcast. I think it's the deceptive beauty of podcasting is it's not too hard to get an almost professional sound, and most people, again, their hearing isn't so attuned to what's going to be really high quality. I mean, it was interesting. I had a friend, one of the most fun things we did with the Marketing Smarts podcast was we did these road shows, and we would go to a city and we would find speakers in the city, and we would go have an event. And so we'd have a live audience, and we'd have people there and stuff like that. And a friend of mine, we were doing it out in LA, and I have a friend who works for KCRW, which is the NPR station. I mean, it has some really famous shows on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he's been working there, and he's like an audio tech guy. So he was like, so, I mean, do you guys really have production values or something like that? Like, of course, we weren't up to that kind of radio level, but I felt like happy enough to say, like, yeah, I mean, I do edit these. I don't just like do it off my phone and throw it up on the web. We try to make it sound as good as we can. But but of course, even the live recording, that's more challenging than doing it over Skype in my office. So, but where do you live anyway, Jeff?
So we live in Kansas City. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I mean, you got to look like you said, you go out and you get a box. Where do you get a box? You go to the place where people who record audio go, which is Guitar Center or Musicians Friends. And there's somebody in there hanging out. Yeah. That is just hanging out to hang out, right? He's playing his guitar or whatever, and you can go up to him and say, hey, how did you record audio for that? And he'll tell you, and you can go to the store and ask him, like, hey, I've got this problem, and they'll walk you through it. Like, you're not alone, but the strategy behind it is the part that really matters, right? And that's the buzzer noise to let me know I hit a key point, right? This is the transition part. But the strategy behind podcasting is important because a lot of people are like, oh, I want to create a snackable podcast. And it's like, okay, who's your audience? Well, so-and-so. Where are they going to listen to it? In their car. I'm like, snackable's 5 minutes. The car ride's typically 30 to an hour. Right. Why would you want to disrupt them after 5 minutes? Yep. Right. So maybe snackable's not a good format. Maybe go ahead and do a 30-minute show. So that way you can take their whole car ride in and keep them focused on the road. And I think from a strategy perspective, a lot of people are looking at their podcast and they see new shiny syndrome. Yeah. And so are you seeing that now that you're the director of content strategy?
Well, no, it's funny. So at the company I work at now, Deborah, we don't have a podcast, though we absolutely should. We do some video stuff, but though we could be doing more of it. I do think the strategy piece, I mean, the analogy to me is like blogging was 10 years ago or more, where it's just like, you can start a blog. It's easy. You could. I started a blog, and I remember finding out what a blog was. I was in Japan, as it turned out. I've never been back, but I was speaking for a company over in Japan, and I read in the New York Times, and they had an article about blogs. And this is 2000, probably October-ish 2000. I'd never heard of a blog before. And so they're explaining it's a web blog. So blogs.
Userland,
yeah,
right? Dave Weiner saying.
But there, right. And there was this one guy, now I forget his name. He was really the guy who said was the initial.
Yeah, probably Dave. Yeah.
No, well, he was this guy. There's a lot of weird political stuff about the guy I'm talking about. And it was literally just a list of links was his first thing.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so I went on Blogger. I started a blog there, which may still be out there. I haven't visited in a decade or more. But there was this thing of like, yeah, you can start a blog. It's easy. And so then companies start blogs. And then they suddenly realize, well, it looks bad if I haven't posted anything here for 2 months or 3 or 6 or a year. So why are we doing this? And it's interesting that CEO I used to work for, he used to say something which he probably had heard from someone else. If you want to start a blog, you might as well get a dog. Because it was the same sort of thing. Like people, like you see a cute puppy and you're like, oh, I'd love to have a puppy. And then you're like, no, if you take that puppy, you're taking on an obligation that could last 15 years or more. But what are you going to do when you go on vacation? And what are you going to do, if you get trapped at work and all these things? And like, now you got to think about it. And most people with blogs didn't really think about it. It was interesting. Scott Monty said something today I've been thinking a lot about since he said it. Now, he was talking about people need to have more of a clear ethical center about why they're doing things. And part of what he was saying is we need to put the customer at the center of what we're doing things, etc. But what he pointed out was that technology has really enabled us to do a lot of different things. Of course, it made everyone a publisher. Now it makes everyone a media person or company or something like that. You can do a podcast, you can do videos, you can have a TV show. It's like now anyone could do it. I mean, not like full-blown broadcast style, but in many cases close enough, and usually close enough for your purposes. But what Scott was saying was technology ends up leading us to do things just because we can do them, not because it's the right thing to do or the appropriate thing to do for what we're trying to accomplish. And so that's how I think about podcasting too. It's anyone hearing this literally could probably open up whatever computer they have and record a podcast episode and upload it somewhere, and now you're on your way.
Yeah.
But it was something I had to talk about with Anne. Like Anne was very clear, like, if we're going to do this, it has to come out every week. And it has to come out every week on the same day.
Yeah.
So this is now, it becomes, it's not exactly appointment television, but people need to get into a rhythm of expecting something that's going to happen. And of course, we want to try to build out what we can do with it in terms of how can we make a podcast actually the center of some of the content that we're creating. So of course, we had at least 2 blog posts that came out associated with every podcast episode. So now there's already a lot of work just to get the podcast, find the guests. Actually, especially we were interviewing a lot of authors. We were fortunate enough where a lot of publishers and PR people were coming to us, hey, any marketing book that came out, someone would ask, hey, can we be on Marketing Smarts podcast? But that means, I took it seriously. I would read these books. I read more marketing books in that 2-year period than I ever had before or since. Because I want to ask informed questions. I want to take these people seriously. I want it to be a good podcast.
Yeah.
Though it's interesting, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Jeff. Like in terms of the strategy piece. So we had an audience, and we were just trying to diversify the type of content that we had, so we could reach more people. And it was also so we could be on new platforms. We weren't on iTunes before and whatever. And again, we had an existing audience that we were trying to bring something new to. But one thing we hadn't really talked about, and I don't think a lot of people think about necessarily, is voice. Mm-hmm. So what's the voice going to be? So I was the voice, as you said, and I'm pretty good at figuring out what a company's existing voices and then like emulating it. I mean, when I've moved around in my career, I can become the person who's the spokesperson because I pick up, okay, these are the things that are important to us. This is how we talk about them, and I can start doing it. But I didn't think it through beyond that in a sense of, what do I want it to be?
Yeah.
How do I want this to seem? And I felt like, in a way, it became a certain thing by default that in retrospect, I wish I'd thought a little bit more about it. Like I was never adversarial, for example. And I would push people a little bit. Like if I thought what they're saying didn't quite make sense or if I didn't really agree with it. But I felt like I was a very generous interviewer. Mm-hmm. And even if I read someone's book and wasn't a fan of it at all, I would try to find something positive or interesting that we could talk about rather than say like, why did you write this? It's pablum, it's a bunch of platitudes, and it's really, I don't know. You've never done it, yeah, you've never done it, or it's at such a level like you're basically saying be nice to people and do good things. Like that, is that helping anyone really? I didn't do that. And so I would think about that. Like I think it's one thing to actually be natural and authentic. I think I came across, and if at my best, still come across that way. But it's another thing to remember, this is a performance too. And this, let's face it, it's not your truly natural self. Like I didn't swear on the podcast, but I swear quite frequently in my daily life.
You're next to the sea, you have to.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of funny I think when you start thinking about something as a performance, and I even think about that here, and I spoke here yesterday, and I'm feeling critical of my stagecraft and things I could have done differently performatively. It's not about the content, but was I deliberately projecting a certain sort of image in how I was speaking and the way I was saying things? Or was I doing kind of default autopilot things or things that I knew were kind of safe and fit into the context? Because we all, we're humans and it's like human see, human do. We're emulating the people around us and we're fitting into a milieu because that's humans want to get along with each other, just anthropologically. But part of the game here is how far can you step out of that so you actually you rise up, but you become a signal rather than just noise. But how far can you go with that, and how deliberately can you make that happen? And that's a much harder thing to think about, especially if you're just doing this off the cuff, or someone says, hey, let's start a podcast.
Your CMO just handed you a global campaign with a short deadline and the request to lead with video. You're given a team of you and, well, you. This campaign is asking for 15 videos that need to create awareness and engagement across multiple online destinations, drive demand and lead gen, and measure performance. Whew, calm down. Everything's gonna be okay. We've got you covered. First things first, we're gonna set you up with Video Marketing Suite, which will allow you to access everything you need from a single online location. And it's made for marketers, so you can easily run your campaign yourself. With just a couple of clicks, your videos are uploaded, automatically optimized to work across all screens and devices. You can distribute to your social channels to reach audiences where they are, and then drive them back to a customized branded video portal using Gallery, which you can create quickly, easily, and in multiple languages. For live events, Brightcove offers an easy-to-use live streaming interface, and after you're done streaming, trim the video and post it on demand for people who missed the event. We'll even help you create interactive elements to optimize video for lead generation. To make sense of all this, our analytics platform tracks a number of statistics in an easy-to-use UI. This data feeds into leading marketing automation platforms. You can see who watched and for how long, and what other content they consumed. Then you know what to create and who it's for. We're Brightcove. We'll help ensure that your video marketing is a success.
It's a lot like when you start blogging and you have to write an article and you've never written an article before.
Right.
You start to define a voice, and then when you get into audio, yeah, you go in and edit, and I can tell when I fall out of the voice because I see a lot of me and then not as much of them. And it's like, oh, I really wanted to talk about that topic myself. I just happen to have somebody on there to interview.
Yeah.
And so you start to see those characteristics about yourself. One of the things, like, we just did an employee survey, and they said about me, they said, I don't know if he likes him. He never looks me in the eye. He's always really quiet, because my real self is, I would rather look at the ground and talk to you, because I'm just not that's who I am. And let's just not even have a conversation. Let's go do an email.
Right.
But when I'm podcasting, I know the other person is far more uncomfortable, especially with the cameras, than I am. And so eye contact matters and things like that. So I will, at the beginning, I would force myself to stare at people. And I would interview people like news anchors that I've seen for 20 years on the news, and I'm used to seeing them on TV, and it was the most freaky experience of my life. And I'm like, it's just, for me, stress to do it, but I knew I had to do it. And then over time, you just get used to it. The cameras go off, this thing hits record, you can go back to who you are, but it does require you to have a consistent voice that you will develop over time, and your audience will tell you when you fall out of your voice, and they know when something's wrong with you or when things are changing. And so it's one of those things that naturally forms, just kind of like your running gait, or the way you interact with your friends. If you're a hugger or not a hugger, right? Those people at a conference are like, uh-oh, here comes like Joe Polizzi, like, here comes Joe Polizzi, I'm about ready to give him a hug, right? And those are just the things about, I think, podcasting just stretches out of a lot of comfort zones to record something.
I think it's funny, like you were saying, this natural gait part. I think it's when we're developing a personal style like this, and especially if we're not actors, that we're all acting, and we all are acting towards this kind of ideal of ourselves that usually, I think, hasn't been fully consciously articulated even to ourselves. It's who we are and who people recognize us to be, but it's who we are almost unconsciously. And that's what I found with podcasting, is it, like you were just saying, it makes you become more conscious of things, verbal tics, ways that you talk to things, ascending voice at the end of a sentence or whatever, ways that we pause, ways that we fill in space. I know there's a thing I realized where I have a kind of a thinking out loud voice. If I haven't fully formulated a question, I'll start dancing around it, and I'll also start asking the question, or I would, that actually incorporated a lot more asides and qualifications. So my questions would end up becoming so long, because I'd want to say, look, first of all, I'm asking the question not because I'm an idiot, so I want to show you all I know. So here's the things. And then I want you to answer the question, but I don't want you to talk about these things. So let's anticipate those responses. And now I'm finally asking you the real question. But often, by the time I got to that, I would really be asking them two questions. And it's something I really had to think back about. First of all, when you talk about editing, most of the editing I would do was editing out myself. As man, that question went on so long. You've got to chop out you, because they're not. It's funny, people do get used to you as the interviewer and the voice, as you were just saying, like a marketing profs or something. And so there is something, having a personality and a voice that people relate to is important. But in every single episode, it's not about you or your voice. Ideally, the spotlight needs to be cast on whoever you're interviewing. And the hardest part, I think, is getting out of the way of that.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for your time. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to another podcaster. And just, it's awesome to meet you.
Nice. Well, really nice to speak with you, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.